She hadn't opened that drawer in years. Dust had gathered where memory once lived. But that morning, something pulled her toward. It may be the sound of the wind. Maybe the silence that had begun to feel too loud. Inside lay a cassette tape wrapped in a faded ribbon. It had his handwriting on it. "Play when you miss me." Her fingers trembled. She almost smiled, the kind of smile that hurts more than tears. The tape clicked, and a younger version of herself filled the room. Her own voice, recorded decades ago, spoke softly. "If you're listening, it means I never found the courage to call." The air froze. She pressed pause, but the silence after the voice was even heavier. Sometimes the past doesn't echo, it waits. There had been two of them once, Anna and Michael. They had promised forever, in a kitchen full of cheap laughter and burnt toast. They believed time was patient. It wasn't. He left chasing opportunity. She stayed guarding stability. Letters became shorter, calls became polite, and love turned into weather talk. Years later, his mother called. He had passed suddenly. No warning, no goodbye. Only a small box of his things arrived in the mail. She opened it that night and found the cassette. But she couldn't play it then. She wasn't ready to hear herself apologize. Now, decades later, the same house still smelled of the same loneliness. The walls hadn't aged. She had. Every picture frame was a promise time had forgotten to keep. She pressed play again. "Michael, if you're listening, it means I couldn't face what I did to us." Her younger voice cracked on the tape. "I thought silence would protect me from pain. It only protected me from peace." The words echoed across the empty room. Even the clock seemed to hesitate before ticking again. She whispered to the air, "I thought I had more time." The rest of the day moved like an old film reel. She brewed tea she didn't drink. She sat by the window, watching people walk dogs, hold hands, live lives that hadn't paused. She thought of the last time they'd spoken. He'd said, "Take care of yourself." She had answered, "You too." It was the kind of ending that pretends it isn't one. Night fell slowly. She took out a notebook and began to write, not to him, but to the years between them. "Dear time, you took everything I didn't say and buried it under routine. You turned seconds into regrets, days into silence. If I could trade one tomorrow for one yesterday, I'd call him back before he hung up." She closed the notebook. Her hands rested on the cover as if holding a heartbeat that no longer belonged to her. The next morning, she walked to the beach for the first time in months. The sea was calm, too calm like it had secrets. She sat where they used to sit, letting the wind tangle her hair. "I never said I was sorry," she whispered. A gull cried overhead as if answering. Maybe the ocean forgives what people can't. Back home, she searched for the old rotary phone. It didn't work anymore, but she dialed his number out of habit. Her finger circled each digit slowly, the way grief circles memory. When she finished, she let the receiver rest against her chest. The dial tone hummed like a ghost, still trying to connect. That night, the cassette played by itself, or maybe she dreamt it did. Her younger voice again. "If I could do it over, I'd tell you the truth sooner." Pause. "The truth is, I never stopped loving you." The tape clicked off. Outside, thunder rolled softly. Rain traced paths down the window like tears that finally found direction. She realized something then. Regret isn't about what we lost. It's about what we kept to ourselves. She took the tape to the fireplace. For a moment, she almost tossed it in. Then she stopped. Maybe some ghosts deserve a shelf, not a grave. She placed it on the mantel beside a photo of them laughing in the rain. Morning, again. A knock at the door. A delivery she hadn't ordered. A small envelope. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid of the same beach she'd visited. And on the back, written in faded ink, still waiting for that call. Her knees weakened. It couldn't be him. It must be coincidence. Yet she smiled, because coincidence is just another word for mercy. For the rest of that week, she kept hearing music, songs they used to hum without words. Maybe memory has its own radio station, playing only for those who still remember the frequency. She sat again by the window, whispering to the wind, "I forgive you. I forgive me." Somewhere in the distance, thunder answered softly, and for the first time in years, she felt lighter. She began writing again the next morning. But this time, not to Michael Shea, wrote to whoever might one day find her words. "If you ever love someone, tell them," she wrote. "Even if your voice shakes. Even if it's midnight. Because silence grows teeth." Pages filled quickly. She didn't reread them. She just let the ink run, like veins finding their way back to a heart. By noon, she had written 20 pages of memories that refused to stay buried. Outside. The world carried on. Children ran past her porch. A dog barked. A car horn reminded her that life doesn't pause for our grief. She smiled faintly. Maybe. That was the lesson. The world keeps spinning until you decide to stand up and walk with it again. That afternoon, she visited the nursing home, where she sometimes volunteered. The halls smelled of sanitizer and lavender. An old man sat by the piano, humming a tune she recognized but couldn't name. She sat beside him and whispered, "That song sounds like forgiveness." He nodded slowly. "It's called Return to Me. My wife used to play it until her hands forgot how. They stayed there, not speaking. Sometimes the right company is the one that doesn't demand conversation." When she left, he said, "Come back tomorrow. You still have music in you." The words followed her home like a lantern in fog. That night, she dreamt of Michael. He wasn't angry. He looked younger, standing by the sea. He said nothing, just handed her a shell. When she woke, the sound of the waves still echoed in her chest. She whispered, "All right then, I'll live for both of us." Weeks turned into a quiet kind of rhythm. She started walking to the post office again, not to send letters, but to watch people send theirs. She loved the sound of envelopes sliding into the bin. It was proof that someone, somewhere, still believed in connection. One morning she saw a young couple arguing outside. The girl was crying, the boy staring at the ground. For a moment, she saw herself and Michael. She wanted to step forward, to tell them not to waste years proving who was right when they could be busy being kind. But she didn't interrupt. She just whispered to herself, "Say it while you can." At home, she found an old answering machine buried under books. When she plugged it in, a single light blinked, read one unheard message. The voice was faint, under static. "Anna, it's me. I'm heading out tomorrow. I didn't want to leave things like this. I know we'll find each other again someday." She froze. She had never heard that before. The message had waited all these years, sleeping inside a forgotten wire. She sat on the floor, both hands over her mouth, listening again and again until the tape wore thin. He had called. She had just been too hurt to pick up. And somehow, life had saved that moment, like mercy trapped in plastic. That evening, she went back to the beach. The tide was low, the air heavy with salt. She knelt and buried a small glass jar in the sand. Inside it, she placed the cassette tape, the photograph, and one note. "Thank you for waiting this long." The wind lifted her hair. She laughed softly, laughter that sounded like release. Months passed. Her house began to change. She opened windows that had been locked for years. She painted the walls pale blue, the color of after the storm, she called it. Neighbors started waving again. She waved back. She even joined the library reading group. When she read aloud, people listened, and she realized her voice still had purpose. Every week, she returned to the nursing home. The old man by the piano always asked, "Did you bring the sunrise with you?" She'd smile and answer, "Maybe just the light after it." They began to play small melodies together, two forgotten souls, composing something new. Each note was a memory forgiven. One morning, as autumn began to paint the trees, she sat by her window with tea and looked at the empty mantel. Where the tape once rested, now stood a single fresh lily. She didn't put it there. Maybe a neighbor, maybe the wind, maybe him. She didn't need to know. Some mysteries are better left as blessings. That night, she wrote her final letter. Not to anyone, just to the world. "Dear whoever still listens, I spent half my life waiting to be understood, and the other half regretting what I didn't say. If you hear this, know that silence doesn't protect love, it buries it alive. Speak, even when your voice trembles. And if you can't speak right, words are the only ghosts that ever come back gentle." She placed the letter by the window and went to sleep. Morning came quietly. Sunlight crept across her table, warming the cup beside the letter. She was still, peaceful, a faint smile resting where worry used to live. The clock ticked once, twice, then kept steady as if time itself had forgiven her. Later that day, a neighbor found the note and read it aloud on his porch. Others gathered. By evening, someone had copied it onto social media. Within days, thousands had shared the lines. "Silence doesn't protect love, it buries it alive." And somewhere, maybe beyond sound or sky, Michael smiled. That evening, the sky turned the same shade of gold they once called home. The sea kept whispering her name, not as loss anymore, but as return. That's how Anna's story ends, not with goodbye, but with the smallest truth echoing forever. We can't rewrite what was left unsaid, but we can still choose to listen.